I wasn't looking for anything that day. Just clearing out the attic like Linda asked me to. We were planning to redo the upstairs, finally rip out the old carpet, maybe open up a wall in the bedroom. She said before we called the contractors, we should go through all the boxes. Throw out what we didn't need. I agreed. It was a Saturday. I just cut the grass and figured I had time to check off one more thing before dinner. I went up there expecting old clothes, photos, maybe some junk from college we never got rid of. There was this box labeled in her handwriting, cards and letters. I smiled a little when I saw it. Thought maybe there'd be old birthday cards, love notes from when we first got married, that kind of thing. I sat down, opened it, and started going through. The first few were nothing special. A card from her aunt. A wedding invitation from someone I didn't remember. A thank you note from a neighbor who moved away 5 years ago. Then I found it. An envelope with no name on the outside. Just folded once and tucked in between 2 holiday cards. I opened it. First line said, "I miss you. Every time I see you at school, it hurts." It stopped me cold. I kept reading. "If you had left her like you said you would, I wouldn't be living this double life. I know we said it had to stop, but I can't lie to myself anymore." I wanted more. Still do. I felt like someone had punched me right in the chest. It was Linda's handwriting. No question. But she hadn't written this to me. And it wasn't just some old crush. Not some innocent high school memory. This was real. She'd been with someone else. Someone married, apparently. And she loved him. I sat there on that dusty floor with the letter in my hands, my heart beating hard. Not angry yet, more stunned. Like the air had been knocked out of me. We'd been married 16 years. We'd been through money problems, job changes, losing my dad, almost losing her mom. We'd had hard years, yeah, but we'd always made it through. I thought we were solid. So what the hell was this? When was this? I looked around the box, tried to find something dated, anything to give me context. I found an old Christmas photo with a year written on the back, 2018. Same envelope. Same style. Maybe the letter was from around then. For years ago? We were still married. Still living together. Still planning vacations and grocery lists and fixing the garage door. I looked through more of the box. Nothing else like it, at least not right there. But the damage was done. I didn't know what to do. What to say. If I should ask her about it or keep quiet. If it even mattered now. But it did. That was the problem. Because she never told me. She made a choice, and then she buried it. Let me keep walking through life thinking everything between us was honest. And I couldn't look at her the same after that. That night at dinner, she acted normal. Asked if I wanted garlic bread. Told me about a student who fell asleep during a spelling test. Laughed about it. I sat there eating, nodding, smiling back. Like nothing had changed. But everything had. After dinner, she sat next to me on the couch. Put her head on my shoulder like always. Said, "You're quiet tonight." "I'm just tired," I told her. She didn't ask anything else. She fell asleep on the couch 20 minutes later, TV still on. I sat there, staring at the wall. Letter still folded in my back pocket. I wasn't angry. Not yet. But something had cracked wide open inside me. And I knew it wasn't going to close. I didn't bring it up. Not that night. Not the next day either. Something in me wanted to ask her straight out. Who was it? When did it happen? How long did it go on? But every time I looked at her, the words got stuck somewhere behind my teeth. So instead, I watched. Not obviously. I didn't snoop through her purse or follow her around. I just paid attention in a way I hadn't before. The way she hummed while doing dishes. How she always kept her phone face down. How she smiled at her students' stories, but never at mine. Little things started to stand out. Monday morning, she packed her lunch like she always did. Left early, said she had a faculty meeting. I told her to drive safe. She kissed me on the cheek, just like usual. But as the door closed behind her, I felt a weight settle in my chest. I didn't trust that kiss. I didn't trust anything. At work, I couldn't focus. My coworker asked if I was coming to lunch, and I told him no, said I had emails to catch up on. But I just sat there at my desk, staring at the same spreadsheet for 20 minutes, thinking about that letter. I started remembering things, small, quiet things that I hadn't thought twice about at the time. The year she came home late every Thursday because she was helping with the school play. The guy who showed up at our Christmas party that year and barely looked me in the eye. The way she once called me by the wrong name and laughed it off like it was nothing. Back then, I didn't give it a second thought. Now, I couldn't unsee it. That night, she fell asleep early. I lay there next to her, staring at the ceiling. Her breathing was soft, calm, She looked peaceful, like someone with nothing to hide. I wanted to shake her awake and ask, how do you do that? How do you sleep so soundly knowing what you've done? But I didn't. I just stayed quiet. The next few days went on like that. Normal routines. Work, dinner, laundry, bills. But something had changed in me. I wasn't reacting to things the way I used to. I wasn't joking around or starting conversations. I didn't reach for her hand while we watched TV. She noticed. One night she said, "You okay? You've been off lately." I looked at her. I wanted to say, yeah. Just found out my wife used to write love letters to someone else. But I didn't. "I'm fine," I said. She looked at me for a second too long. Like maybe she didn't believe it. But she let it go. I didn't. I started sleeping on the couch. Said my back was acting up again. She offered me pain meds. I said no thanks. I didn't want to lie more than I already felt like I was. By the end of the week, I started avoiding her. Volunteered for extra hours at work. Stayed out running errands longer than I needed to. Sat in my truck in the driveway for half an hour some nights just listening to nothing. I didn't know what I was waiting for. An apology? A confession? Something in me hoped she'd bring it up. That maybe, after all these years, she'd sit me down and say, "There's something I've been meaning to tell you." But she didn't. She laughed at the same shows. Cooked the same dinners. Kissed me on the cheek with the same routine as always. It made me realize something. She really thought it was over. That what she'd done, what she'd felt, it had expired and disappeared. Like old groceries. Tossed, forgotten. But it hadn't disappeared for me. It was still sitting in a locked drawer in the garage, folded inside an envelope I didn't ask for. And every time she smiled at me like nothing had happened, I felt a little more hollow. Not because she broke my heart, but because she never gave me the chance to know it was broken. I wasn't looking for another one. I really wasn't. By then I'd already found a way to live with the first letter, not deal with it, just live with it. I kept it in a drawer in the garage, next to some old warranty manuals and a box of tools I hadn't touched in years. Some nights I'd open it up just to remind myself I didn't imagine it, that I wasn't crazy. But then came the second letter. I found it 2 weeks later, tucked inside an old scrapbook we kept in the closet. Linda had asked me to bring it down, said she wanted to scan some old family pictures for her mom's birthday. I flipped through it while standing at the counter, mostly looking for the photos she needed. And then it slipped out, folded paper, same handwriting, no envelope this time. My stomach dropped before I even opened it. It started with, "I can't stop thinking about you, even when I'm at work." And further down, "I wish you could walk in like you used to. I always felt safe when you were nearby." Same tone, same style, and the same pain in my chest reading it. The first letter hit like shock. This one felt heavier. Because now I knew it wasn't just one message. This was a pattern, a real connection, a version of her life I had no part in, but one she'd clearly put energy into. And worse, it was written like a relationship that had already happened. Not a fantasy, not a one-time thing. It sounded like something real. I read it 3 times. Then I folded it slowly and sat at the table, staring out the window. Linda was in the living room, watching TV. Something light, a reality show, probably. I could hear the laugh track playing over and over. And I sat there wondering, did she ever look at me the way she looked at him? Did she ever write me a letter like that and never send it? Because I sure didn't have any. We were a practical couple. We paid bills, planned meals, called our moms on Sundays. We didn't write each other love notes. We didn't sneak around hallways or send secret messages. Maybe that was the difference. Maybe I was too steady. Or maybe I just didn't give her the kind of chaos she thought she wanted. Later that night, we had dinner. Chicken and green beans. She asked about my day. I lied and said it was fine. She didn't notice. I watched her talk. Watched her laugh. Watched her move around the kitchen like she was still my wife. But something had shifted for good. I couldn't feel anything toward her anymore. Not anger. Not hurt. Not even curiosity. What I felt was distance. Like I was watching someone from behind a window. I went out to the garage that night and put the second letter in the same drawer as the first. I didn't lock it this time. What would be the point? I thought about confronting her. I really did. I imagined what I'd say. I even rehearsed it in my head a few times. "I found your letters. Who was he? Why did you stay with me if your heart was somewhere else?" But none of it came out. Because part of me knew the answers wouldn't change anything. She'd probably cry. Maybe apologize. Maybe swear it was a mistake. That it never went anywhere. That she was confused. That it was a hard time. And maybe all of that would be true. But so what? It still happened. She still chose to keep it from me. And I was the one left sitting in that silence, wondering how many more pieces of our life were built on things I didn't know. I didn't yell, didn't slam doors, didn't accuse her of anything. But that night, I started thinking about what my life would look like if I just walked away. And it was the first time in years that the idea didn't feel impossible. It was a Saturday afternoon when she said it. We haven't seen Tessa and Greg in forever. I invited them over for dinner tonight. She was slicing vegetables when she said it, like she was mentioning the weather. I froze for a second, just long enough for her to look up. You okay with that? She asked. I nodded. Yeah, sure. My voice didn't crack. My face didn't change. But inside, everything shifted. Greg. I didn't know for sure if he was the one from the letters. But I had a gut feeling. The timing lined up. The tone. The words she used. And the way she'd mentioned him offhandedly over the years. Casually, like he wasn't important, but always with a little more air than needed. I remembered seeing him once at a school event. He'd shaken my hand, smiled a little too wide, and avoided eye contact after the first 3 seconds. At the time, I thought nothing of it. Now I remembered it too clearly. They arrived right on time. Tessa brought a salad. Greg brought a bottle of red wine, and a look that said he'd rehearsed being here. He hugged Linda when they came in. A little too warm. A little too long. I watched them closely. Linda looked calm. Comfortable. Poured his glass like she'd done it 100 times. Laughed at something he said about a field trip. Tessa didn't seem to notice. Or maybe she didn't want to. We all sat at the table like nothing was wrong. I nodded when I needed to. Said the usual things. How's work? How's the dog? Still living near the high school? But I was somewhere else the whole time. At one point, Greg told a story about a fundraising event at school. How Linda ended up painting kids' faces while he ran the prize booth. They both laughed. Even Tessa smiled. I didn't. Because that was the year she came home late every Thursday. Said she had committee meetings. Said she was just helping out. It clicked. That was the year the letters were from. I picked at my food for the rest of the meal. Answered questions with one-word replies. I'm sure I didn't seem rude, just tired. That's how it always goes. When a man goes quiet, nobody suspects heartbreak. They just assume he's worn out. After dinner, we had coffee in the living room. Tessa talked about redecorating their kitchen. Greg chimed in with some story about cabinets not lining up. I watched him gesture with his hands like he'd done it 1,000 times. Confident, smooth, charming in that kind of school principal way. Linda laughed again. I kept my eyes on her the whole time. Not in anger, just studying. Watching the way she looked at him when she wasn't thinking about it. And I didn't feel jealous. I felt finished. When they finally left, Linda smiled and said, That was nice, right? We should do it more often. I just nodded and started clearing the table. She didn't notice anything was off. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay there thinking about Greg sitting in my house, sipping my coffee, laughing with my wife like nothing ever happened. Maybe nothing physical did happen between them. Maybe it never went that far. But it went far enough for letters. Far enough for secrets. Far enough for me to look at her now and feel like a guest in my own life. In the morning, I took both letters, put them in a new envelope, and wrote a name on the front. Tessa. Then I placed it on the desk in the garage. Not to send yet. Not yet. But because something had to change. And I couldn't keep pretending like I didn't already know the truth. It sat on the desk for 2 days. The envelope with her name on it. Just sitting there, untouched. No return address. No explanation. Just the truth sealed up and waiting. Every time I walked into the garage, I saw it. And every time I asked myself the same question. Do I really want to do this? Because once it's done, once it's sent, there's no undoing it. No taking it back. No pretending it never happened. Tessa would know. Greg's wife. Linda's friend. The whole thing would blow open. I kept thinking maybe I'd just tear it up and forget it. Let it stay between me and the paper. Keep the peace. Let the years cover it like dust on old furniture. But the thing about truth is, once you've seen it, it doesn't go away. It starts showing up in everything. I'd sit across the table from Linda and hear it in her voice. I'd pass by her classroom on the way to drop something off and wonder who else she smiled like that for. I'd watch her talk to other teachers at the grocery store and question if they knew, if they'd seen the shift in her that I missed. It was everywhere. So I kept circling around it, trying to decide. One night I poured myself a drink, sat out back, and went through both letters again. I'd read them so many times they weren't even shocking anymore. Just sad. They weren't dramatic. No confessions of anything physical. No demands. Just quiet little messages from one married person to another. But they told the whole story. She loved someone else, even if it didn't last, even if he didn't love her back. She gave something that used to belong to me to someone else and never said a word about it. And I was tired of carrying that weight alone. So the next morning, I got in the truck and drove to the post office. I dropped the envelope in the blue box out front. No hesitation. No turning back. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like setting something in motion that should have happened a long time ago. Tessa deserved to know. Not because I wanted to hurt her, but because I knew what it felt like to live in the dark. To sleep beside someone who once promised the world to someone else and never told you. I drove home in silence. No music. No talk radio. Just the sound of the road. When I pulled into the driveway, Linda was watering the plants. She waved. I waved back. Same as always. That night, she cooked steak. Lit a candle. Said we should eat outside since the weather was good. I said sure. We sat on the back porch, the sun dipping down, cicadas buzzing from the trees. She passed me the potatoes like everything was fine. And I realized something. She really didn't know. She didn't have a clue that her past was about to knock on the door. That made me feel two things at once, sad and strangely calm. Because now I wasn't holding it anymore. I wasn't protecting her from the damage she created. I was just waiting. I didn't know when Tessa would get it, or how she'd react. Maybe she'd confront Greg that night. Maybe she'd call Linda the next day. Maybe she'd never say a word, just start pulling away like I did. But I knew one thing for sure. When that envelope landed in her hands, everything Linda thought she'd buried would come back to life. And it wouldn't be my problem anymore. It took 3 days. That's how long it was between the day I dropped the letter in the mailbox and the moment it all changed. Linda came home late that Wednesday. Said her last class ran long and she had to stay after to deal with a student issue. Her voice sounded normal, but she didn't look right. Her face was tight, pale. She didn't touch her dinner. That night, she sat on the edge of the bed for a long time before lying down. She didn't say much. I asked if everything was okay. She said yeah, just tired. But I knew. I didn't say anything else. I didn't need to. The next day, I got the confirmation. Tessa texted me. She'd never texted me before. Never needed to. We weren't close. Just people connected through other people. Her message said, I got the letters. Thank you for telling me the truth. I'm sorry you had to live with it this long. That was all. Short. Direct. I stared at it for a while, then deleted it. Later that night, Linda came into the living room while I was watching TV. She stood there, remote still in my hand, her arms folded across her chest like she was holding something in. Then she asked, Did you send something to Tessa? I paused the show. Looked at her. Yes, I said. She didn't blink. Didn't yell. She just said, Why? And for the first time in a long time, I didn't hold back. Because she deserved to know who her husband really was. And who her friend really was. Linda looked like she wanted to respond. Like she had something locked and loaded. But nothing came out. She sat down on the edge of the couch. Tom, she said, it was years ago. I know. It didn't mean anything. He didn't leave his wife. I stayed. I chose us. I nodded slowly. Yeah, you chose to stay. But you didn't choose to tell me. Silence. She looked down at her hands. They were shaking. I didn't want to lose everything, she said quietly. You didn't lose everything, I said. You just lost the version of me who didn't know. Her eyes welled up. I thought I buried it. I thought I could move on. But you didn't, I said. You just moved around it. She tried to say something, but I stood up. I'm going to bed, I said. You can sit here and think about what you want to say next. But I'm done pretending like it didn't happen. I left her on the couch, staring at the floor. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. She didn't talk much. Didn't cook. Barely looked at me when we passed in the hallway. She slept on her side of the bed, curled up, facing the wall. Then the ripple hit. Tessa filed for divorce. Greg moved out of the house. I heard it through a friend at the school, one of those people who always hears things. The story started to spread. Small town. Word travels. It didn't take long before the staff at Linda's school started looking at her differently. I heard she was pulled from her leadership position on the curriculum committee. No announcement. Just quietly replaced. Parents started asking questions too. Not directly. Not accusations. Just doubt. And doubt spreads fast when you're supposed to be the respectable one. I didn't gloat. Didn't tell anyone it was me. But I watched her face every evening when she walked through the door. She looked 10 years older. Like she'd aged in a week. She still hadn't asked me to forgive her. She still hadn't told me the whole story. But now she didn't have to. The whole world around her was changing, and not because of what I did. Because of what she'd done. And the longer she stayed silent, the louder it all became. I filed the papers a week later. There was no fight. No big final argument. Just me and my truck, parked outside the courthouse, watching the morning sun come through the windshield, knowing it was time. I walked in, filled out the forms, paid the fee, and walked back out with a copy in my hand. Just like that, 16 years of marriage were set in motion to end. I didn't feel relief. I didn't feel rage. What I felt was something I hadn't felt in months, clarity. When I got home, Linda was in the kitchen, loading the dishwasher. She didn't even turn around when I came in. I set the folder on the table. She glanced over, saw the header, froze. Then she turned. "What is that?" "You know what it is," I said. She looked at me like she wanted to cry, but the tears wouldn't come. "So that's it?" she asked. "You're just walking away?" "No," I said. "I'm not just walking away. I've already stayed too long." She sat down slowly, hands in her lap. I waited for the speech, the apology, the explanation, that we can fix this. But she didn't say any of it. Instead, she said, "I thought I buried it." "I didn't think you'd ever know." I nodded. "You didn't bury it. You just hid it. And now that it's out, I can't live with it." "But I stayed," she said. "I stayed with you. I built a life with you." "You stayed," I repeated, "but you didn't come clean. You built a life with a lie in the middle of it. And you let me build around that, not knowing the foundation was cracked." Her voice dropped. "It was a mistake." "No," I said. "It was a choice." Repeated more than once. Written down. Folded. Saved. Then hidden. She didn't argue. She just stared at the papers, like they might disappear if she looked long enough. "We can split everything fair," I said. "No games. No lawyers unless you want one. I just want to be done." "I don't want anything from you," she said. I believed her. She signed 2 days later. We didn't talk much after that. Just handled the paperwork, changed the names on the accounts, sorted what belonged to who. I kept the truck, my tools, the small place by the park. She stayed in the house. I didn't want it. Too many memories. Too many ghosts. Friends started noticing. A few reached out. I kept it simple. "We're splitting up." "Sorry to hear that." "Yeah, me too." I didn't tell them why. I didn't tell anyone. Not because I wanted to protect her, I didn't, but because I didn't need to explain myself. Not anymore. One Saturday, I came to pick up a few boxes I'd left in the garage. Linda was home. She didn't say much. Just stood in the doorway while I loaded up the truck. Before I left, she asked, "Will I ever see you again?" I thought about it. Then I said, "I hope not." She nodded, like she already knew that was the answer. I drove away without looking back. It didn't feel like freedom. Not right away. It just felt quiet. But that kind of quiet was better than living in her silence. Better than lying to myself. Better than building a life on something I never agreed to. It had been about 2 months since the divorce was finalized. I was living in a small rental near the edge of town. Nothing special, 2 bedrooms, old carpet, cracked driveway, but it was mine. Clean. Quiet. No history in the walls. I was out back one afternoon, fixing a broken fence board, when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I didn't answer. Figured it was spam or a wrong number. Then came the text. "It's me. Please. Just 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." I stood there, holding a screwdriver in one hand, phone in the other. The air felt heavier all of a sudden. I didn't reply. 3 hours later, she called again. This time I picked up. I don't know why. Maybe part of me was curious. Maybe I just wanted to see what version of the truth she'd try to offer now. Her voice was quiet. Shaky. "Tom. Thank you for answering. I wasn't sure you would." I didn't say anything. Just waited. "I know I don't have a right to call you," she said. I don't know who else to talk to anymore." Still, I stayed quiet. I've lost everyone. Tessa won't speak to me. People at work avoid me. I feel like I'm being erased. I let out a short breath through my nose. "You feel erased?" I asked. She caught that. Went quiet. Then, "I didn't mean it like that. I know I caused this. I didn't think it would all fall apart like this." I finally spoke. "You thought it would stay buried. And it almost did. But truth has a way of surfacing, Linda." "I was scared," she said. "I thought if I told you, I'd lose you. So I said nothing. I told myself it was better that way." "No," I said. "You told yourself you were better off that way. There's a difference." She sniffled. I could hear it through the phone. No words for a few seconds. I still think about us, she said. About how it used to be. About how solid we were. I know I ruined it. I don't expect you to forgive me. You're right, I said. I won't. She took that in. I gave her the space. I guess I was hoping you'd at least understand why. I do, I said. You were unhappy. You wanted something different. Maybe more exciting. Maybe just someone who looked at you a certain way. I don't know. And honestly, I don't care anymore. Silence again. I don't want money. I'm not calling to beg. Linda, I said, cutting her off. You don't owe me anything. And I don't owe you a place in my life. There was a long pause. Then, quietly, you really mean that, don't you? I do. The calm in my voice surprised even me. Not because I didn't feel anything, but because I finally felt free. I hope you find peace, I said. But it's not going to be with me. That part of your life is over. I heard her exhale. Long tired. Okay, she whispered. Then she hung up. No dramatic ending. No one screaming into the phone. Just silence. I stood there a while, phone still in my hand, listening to the wind move through the trees behind the house. It was over. Really over. And for the first time since I found that damn letter in the attic, I didn't feel like I was carrying something anymore. I was done. And she finally knew it. I never heard from her again after that call. Not a message. Not a voicemail. Not even a forwarded bill or a piece of stray mail. It was like she vanished. And in a way, I guess she did, at least from my life. But word still traveled. Tessa told a mutual friend that Linda had left the school not long after the divorce. Not officially fired, but encouraged to step down. She called it a mutual decision, but anyone with half a brain could read between the lines. Her reputation didn't survive what came out. Parents stopped trusting her. Coworkers stopped inviting her to anything. Even the teachers who used to love her potlucks and birthday gift sign-ups kept their distance. When people know you lied once, they start to question everything else. I heard she moved into a small rental on the edge of town. 1 bedroom. No yard. No pictures on the walls. Just her and whatever furniture she didn't sell or leave behind. A neighbor said she kept to herself. Didn't talk much. Drove an old sedan that coughed when it turned over in the cold. The woman who used to run every committee, organize every event, be everyone's go-to for advice. Now invisible. And still, I didn't feel satisfaction. Just silence. She made her choices. I made mine. People asked questions now and then. A friend from work said, "Man, you handled all that with a lot of restraint." Another one said, "She always seemed like a good one." You never really know. I just nodded and let them talk. There was no need to tell my side. I didn't need to correct the record. The truth already did that for me. The last time I saw her was by accident. I was walking out of the grocery store with a bag of dog food and a 6-pack. She was standing near the parking lot, waiting for a cab, I guess. Her car must have been in the shop. She saw me. I saw her. But she didn't wave. Neither did I. She looked small. Not physically, but in presence. Her shoulders slumped. Her clothes a little too loose. Hair pulled back quick. No makeup, no effort. Like someone going through the motions. Like someone who stopped expecting to be seen. That moment lasted maybe 3 seconds. But it said more than any conversation ever could. We were strangers now. And honestly, maybe we always had been. I just didn't realize it while I was living next to her every day. When I got home that night, I sat on the porch and watched the sun drop behind the hills. The wind picked up a little. I sipped my drink and didn't think about anything at all. That was the best part of life now. The quiet wasn't heavy anymore. It didn't hurt. It just was. Sometimes, I think people don't really understand what consequences are. They think it's punishment. A ruined career. An empty house. But that's not it. Real consequence is knowing you can't go back. It's watching the person you betrayed walk away, not angry, not bitter, just done. And knowing they're never coming back. That's what she was left with. Not a fight. Not revenge. Just absence. The kind that stretches out across years, across holidays, across empty rooms and quiet mornings. And when people like her finally look around and see what's left, there's no one else to blame.